Hello world, this is Rick It Ralph. Today I'm going to do something a little different. Um, I don't like to just have one viewpoint when it comes to chess theory because I feel like that sometimes it can be a biased view because certain players favor certain positions and certain pieces. So what I did, I took the liberty of scouring the Jostly game database, and if you when you Jockly, I'm sorry. When you go into Jockly, you can click on any chess variant, and they have a few different lists. They have a best players list, which shows the highest rated players in the website. Um, and they also have another list that shows games that have been played by different people. So you can actually go. I'm not sure how far back they go with the dates, but you can go back and look at games that other people played. And I have an interesting game that I dug up. It's between X-Man and Juxtaposer. X-Man is rated 11th highest in the game on the internet on this website, and Juxtaposer is actually number one. Um, but his games are pretty crazy, so I'm not sure what this guy's magic is, but he is the highest rated player on the website. I'm still a few hundred points behind him, but I'm up in fourth or fifth, I forget which right now. But just keep in mind it's a small community, so it's not too impressive. So we'll get started and see what kind of ideas these guys have. Show you some fresh stuff. He plays a center opening. We got a lion high and eagle high. This is going to make for a nice central pawn structure, and he'll have some decent opportunities for breaking through this queen side later on in the game once he gets his lion rolling. So that'll be nice. So we see a flank opening out of Juxtaposer. We'll just call him Poser. But yeah, so he moves his king side prince pawn out. So we have a flank opening. He goes opposite. So it looks like he's trying to claim a different color of space from him and try to get his own pawn development going, go around him. So we'll go through the basic moves pretty quick. So we play a camel move here, and then we see a prince move. This is common response to the camel move because of that tactic I showed you. Now, one thing I notice about these higher level players is they tend to trade off their camel tactics, and you'll see an idea of what I'm talking about. I don't prefer this style of play, but it does offer you a little bit more forward movement to not have to worry about the camels. So we see a straight wing opening on a black, and white is going for the strong center opening. So we have a nice dynamic. We see a two prince defense. Um, and now we see the kingside prince come up. So he hasn't really shown his hand yet on if he's going to play for a full center or if he's going to try to castle quick to one side and go for like a isolated attack. So Poser brings out his kingside pawn, and he's developing his central front now. So he took the option way just in case there was any tactics. Perfectly fine. White plays his queenside knight out. I call this move questionable, but definitely viable. It's not necessary to bring your queenside pawns out per se, and there is something to be said for development here. So that knight development could prove useful even defensively speaking. So we see a simple maneuver right here. If I had to guess, I would say this pawn move has something to do with protecting from the bishop and just like pawn safety in general. It might also be an elephant maneuver so that he can keep his pieces more solid, and maybe he's even looking at a bishop swing in the future. We'll find out. So the second prince comes out. So we don't have too much of a symmetrical opening. White's going for development. Black's trying to pay attention to his pawn structure, probably be just more solid. And we see an elephant come out. This is a pretty interesting set of moves, I have to say. The white elephant coming out means that he's going to have some good light square power and this is going to really open up some tactics going into the middle game. So we see a knight out of X-Man. So as we can see, Black seems to be favoring his elephants and his princes, and White seems to be like bringing out his jumpers. So he's probably looking for more early tactics. So we see the second elephant come out. So this puts a question to why did he make this move so early? And I guess part of the answer is that he wants to move this wing pawn up 2 spaces instead of 1. And this is actually a decent tactic because this camel can be blocked out easier this way. Although I tend to ignore it, but in certain openings this can be very useful. So he's going for a really solid structure. So White starts taking the hill, and he's opening up some space for his bishop. And there's another benefit of this. This phalanx right here is stopping the bishop a little bit, so that's kind of nice because this square could be sensitive and concession could be forced. Although a knight move would suffice, but still, just taking away options from your opponent's always good. We see a wing camel move. I've actually mentioned this in videos, and you can see it's much more used than you would think. It offers nice dynamics for the camel, and it really clears up some central space to keep things uncongested. So White brings his camel out. He's obviously trying to get more central development going, although I think his main focus is this fork right here, and this is that trap I was telling you about. This plays into the middle game too. But and then he's also punishing Black for playing a winged camel because now White will have to find a creative, or Black I should say, will have to find a creative way to defend against this. And the only move I see would be to move the Prince Pawn up, and that's not such a bad move to be honest. Let's see what he does. Yes, he does move the Prince Pawn up. That was probably the most logical move. So we carry on. White decides to do the classical form of wing pawn protection with the standard moves. So you can tell that White is playing very fundamental, and Black is kind of pushing the envelope and trying to go for the most critical, accurate positions, which could bite him in the butt. I'm not going to tell you who won yet, but it's a I went through the game before I showed it, and it looks pretty interesting. So Black brings this camel out right here, so he's trying to bank off of this, and honestly, it wouldn't look too bad to just bring it here either, but I guess the point with this is having a flight square, which is really good because he's going to need a flight square, so that's really the point of that. So White brings his elephant out, and incidentally, he left his pawn hanging. This could be a tactic since this looks hanging, but actually, if Black was to take right here, White could bring his camel out and completely pin down the cannon, and since the bishop has 2 pawns in front of it, it would be kind of difficult to arrange a defense, although it would be possible with quick pawn push threatening the camel. But this has its own downsides, and then a lot of the center power would go away for Black. So we'll see what Black does. So Black does not go for that. He goes for this fork right here. White pretty much left it open. I think part of it was that White didn't mind trading off the bishops. Maybe he thought the camel was more valuable. And dynamically speaking, we could be right, but I feel like the camel is worth way less. So White exchanges off his bishop for a camel. And then Black comes in with his kingside knight, getting development rolling. So White actually mirrors the same tactic Black was using, and Black pretty calmly just ignores it. He brings out his camel, so he's looking for even more tactics now. And these winged camel moves are pretty interesting. I don't usually see them. This is actually a pretty frequent game for these types of moves. I usually don't see them. So he's coming in, trying to go for the same kind of tactic. Again, let's see what White does. White ignores it. So obviously, X-Men is sending a big message that he really does not care about this exchange at all. And let's see if it works out for him. Feasibly speaking, keeping a close game could make this an advantage for White. But let's see what White does. So Black points at the camel. That seems like kind of a vain effort considering the message he just sent out. But White, obviously thinking the camel is better, moves it out of the way so that he can keep his compensation, I suppose. And did I miss a move? So yeah, Black plays this pawn up right here, so he's creating this symmetry with the phalanxes. I really don't care for these moves, but there is something to be said for the solidarity of it all, because I've mentioned in other videos that in the end game of Metamachy, there's just so many pieces, such a big board, so many pawns, that it's so easy to leave behind a ginormous amount of weaknesses when you're entering the end game and you don't have a lot of pieces left. So, this what Poser is trying to do is simply create the safest structure possible because the game's not going anywhere yet, and he's feeling pretty confident with his exchanges. So let's rewind to show that. So apparently White is down for a camel sacrifice, so this is kind of counterintuitive. What is he doing here, folks? Well, it's not quite as crazy as it looks, but it's still pretty crazy. So what he's trying to do is blow through this line with his cannon so that he can get to one of these royal pieces, and this might actually have some merit to it because he is going to have to slowly peel back his pieces as White comes in. So he does, in fact, peel back his pieces, and White just keeps on chugging. I'm guessing that White is looking for a pawn break now, which is counterintuitive to his setup, but if he can get one of these royal pieces, the game will be an easy win. So he's trying to break open this pawn structure and go faster than Black, but Black should be able to easily defend this, so I don't see any problem. So he takes the piece. This is an important point because this gives him more control over how he uses his cannon. And a cool tactic to do with cannons is to keep a piece by the file so that you can change the amount of coverage at will. And this can kind of mess with your opponent in a lot of different ways and gain you tempo. So he starts vacating his royal pieces. So this actually opens up some pretty crazy moves, potentially, but we just see a little king maneuver. He doesn't try to cancel long, he just gets out of the way, so there's that. He's really trying to bring his cannons in, so this elephant comes out. This is pretty interesting, actually, because theoretically, White should be able to take the elephant with the prince and threaten the queen, so let's see if White picks up on that. He does not. So White misses this tactic. Maybe he didn't want to do it. Who knows? It would seem like it would have been a pretty solid move to get him back into the game, but instead this happens. The eagle comes out, and there's a lot of power going into the game. So White stacks his pieces right here. I don't know if I agree with that queen move, but he had to do something with the queen. So the eagle comes back, getting that eagle to a safe spot. Black castles, leaves his rook on the wing. Nothing wrong with that, like we said. Black's pretty much in a good position to do something like this, but I feel like he had plenty of time to just get the rook to an aggressive post. So we see the elephant come out. We see the pawn structure become fixed. So whoever can get at these pawns easier will actually be able to pick up off some weaknesses. And at the moment, it's looking pretty good for Black, although White has some initiative in the center that might fade quickly if he doesn't act now. So White's trying to break in and just create a lot of problems. His king placement's actually kind of hellish for him. If he had just moved his rook over, he'd have a beautiful king position, and only at the cost of one tiny little tempo. So Black brings his cannon out, and White retorts by bringing his cannon and then camel. So he pretty much probably did this to block his eagle. That way, once the pawn line breaks, the eagle doesn't become a target for cannon exchanges. So Black does the same thing, and then White brings his camel up and threatens the lion, which is a good move. He's got it on an outpost. There's no camel to oppose it, and Black's probably not going to trade his dark squared bishop. So unless he can get his elephant over here, he doesn't have much. So the lion comes out, and this is starting to look a little sketchy because depending how this position breaks, the lion might be able to sneak by because this line's not really close enough. So in a tempo situation, the lion would be able to cause quite a bit of havoc, and possibly I think black could even consider going here and taking in the right situation. So white just backs his king off. Black does not take right away. Oh, because of the cannon. So he's trying to threaten with his elephant, which that's opening up a fork. But maybe he has some sort of tactic. I feel like it's not that great. So he just takes with the camel, and wow, it's completely unprotected. Look at that. So black made a horrible blunder right there just now. So that's interesting. So black brings his bishop back, threatens the camel. So does he protect it? No, he just retreats. Goes for the bishop. Maybe he's looking for that compensation back. Bishop threatens the queen. So the queen goes over. And we see it pointing down this line. Maybe he's looking to attack on the king. And now we come back to this pawn over here with the knight coming out. And black's just trying to move all of his pieces slowly in and create his force. So white fixes the pawn structure once again. So what happens there? Well, just backs off. And it's looking like anybody could win, but I think black has a slight edge. But white could possibly break through, but he's just given up. He doesn't really, neither side really has a big finishing move yet. So the cannon comes out, so we're starting to see black catch up in development. And wow, that's not good. It appears that black is giving up his lion. And white, yeah, definitely takes. So yeah, I don't see why he did that. And wow, the cannon's just going nuts. And it seems like white got a little overwhelmed there. And it's funny because I've seen this X-Men fellow beat Poser in a different game. So I know they play at least somewhat frequently, and sometimes he wins. So maybe this guy's just having an off day, or who knows. So black's lion comes in. It's looking pretty bad right now. And oh yeah, in fact, right here, this is where X-Men resigns. So he might have been able to keep fighting, but really just didn't look good. So now we'll recap that just to show the opening, and just you'll see there's a lot of similar concepts, but white brings his center out, and give some credit to white because in the beginning he did play pretty solid. It is arguable that giving up the bishops was bad, but there could always be some sort of dynamic tactic. So you see the standard development, you see how white tries to get some tactics, and black brings out his camels on the wing, which is an interesting strategy. It doesn't work for every position, but it has its advantages. And white almost took advantage, but black just was willing to accept an odd position to get the job done, which that's a good thing. I mean, you have to be able to play the weird positions. So we see how the opening tends to pan out. Pawns clashing isn't as much of a thing in the early game. That it's not as action packed as chess in the beginning. I almost kind of want to say you divide the phases into 4 phases instead of 3. Like there's your unfettered development in the beginning, and then you move into like an early mid game where you're starting the pawn the pawn breaks, but you're just leading into them, and then there's the late middle game, which is where all the pieces fly off, and then the end game. So that's kind of like that extra layer that's in there because the game does take longer. So you have to get used to that pace of play and just have the patience to use bigger armies to attack. So it's just like normal chess, you develop an attack force, but the attack force has to be a little bit bigger. So just remember that. And I'll be showing more videos. I'll try to look into some more games. I have a few games that I've played that I'm thinking about showing, but I want to show ones that are relevant to openings we went over. And yeah, keep watching. Thank you.